after the questions you sent us.
Okay.
And let us slightly differently, but some of them will sound the same as Emily's, but in a slightly different way. Thank you. In my view, I think it's been a momentous year since the first 1.5 degree report in October. Then we had the Climate Change Committee's advice to the government on how we should go about addressing the issues and net zero. We saw the legislation, the simplest legislative change, 80 change into 100, but with enormous consequences to everyone from a UK perspective. And then followed on by these highly influential two reports on oceans and land. So in that context, from scientific perspective, I thought it was a momentous year. And there are lots of other things which happened as well, which brought the message home, which is a great thing to have. But then what do we do about it is a question. With that question in mind, I'd like to put across 4 points for you to think about. The first one is an appreciation of what UK's contribution has been when it comes to especially these 3 reports and wider climate science and other scientific discovery and knowledge creation when it comes to decarbonisation and the climate problem. From authors to reviewers, to technology units, loads of experts have been part and parcel of this on behalf of the UK, which is a great thing. And I think we should celebrate that. And beyond that, there are lots of people who are working behind the scenes to get these reports to an acceptable level, reviews and building consensus outside, and then at the plenaries of IPCC and doing diplomacy to get these reports out. It's an immense task. And for example, my team is at the heart of some of the latter parts of this work, and some of you are in the forefront of this delivery of this work. So I think it's a great thing to celebrate. That's the first point. The second point is how the 3 pieces of work, evidence, which sets things into context as to how interlinked the problems where we discuss. The 1.5 degree report sets out very clearly the scientific base, and then the follow-on oceans and land also sets a chain of events very clearly. To understand how interlinked they are, one good example is the use of bioenergy. If you go back and look at the Climate Change Committee's advice to the government, if you look at the mitigation aspects and what technologies, what areas we should be targeting to decarbonize, you'd see that bioenergy runs through as a thread. But we all know that will have competing demands from a sort of a supply side perspective, and in terms of production perspective also. Is playing into the heart of some of the work with these 3, the later reports are getting into. So in that context, it's a complex feedback loop with most of these activities. And lately we hear a lot about greenhouse gas removals, without which we now seem to believe that we can't achieve a complete decarbonisation or net zero. And then that again is another example of how all these things are interlinked. So that's the second point. But that complexity brings a lot of opportunities as well, and that's my third point. Complex though it is, there are lots of things that we could do here. And in my perspective, innovation is key if we are to put action to address some of these problems. There are loads of things we can do, but all those things will need effective collaboration. And IPCC's work from a sort of evidence generation perspective is a very good example of effective collaboration in my view. It might be slow on certain fronts, but building consensus takes time. That brings me to the 4th point I wanted to make, is about the speed. And evidence is clear as to how fast some of these things are happening. And this task, as I mentioned earlier, it is a simple change in the legislation, but it's an enormous task ahead of us. And we've set the task, if from a UK perspective, is net zero by 2050. Now, to think about the speed that we need to act, collaborate, innovate to get anywhere close to that, can be put into perspective by counting the number of weeks we've got up until 2050. It's just over 1,600 weeks, or 1% of the time we have up until 2050 is about 3 months. And that's how enormous the challenge is. Thank you.
Thank you, Damitha. Stephen, your